All right. Welcome to Canada Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This conversation, taped on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for U.S. House, and we're joined by the Libertarian Party candidate, Scott Gesty. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll start with the most basic of questions. Why are you running for the U.S. House? This is your second go-round.
Yes, it is. I'm running for U.S. House because I'm really interested in giving the people of Delaware a choice outside the two-party system. I mean, over the last few decades, it's really become obvious to many people and to me as well that there isn't much difference between the two parties anymore from a ideological perspective. I mean, they both seem to embrace the ideas of big deficits, huge spending, higher taxes, entangling alliances overseas, government invasion of our privacy, things of that nature, and it's so far removed from what is truly constitutional and what the country was founded upon. So I think the libertarian philosophy has gained a lot of traction over the last few years, especially with the younger people. They're looking for alternatives, and I want to be out there to give those people the alternative to look into something different if they're just burned out over the two-party system.
What would you like voters to know about your qualifications for their job? Maybe some things that they don't already know.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I want to point out is I'm not a career politician. I have never held office before, but I am a certified public accountant here in Delaware. I've been working in the financial service industry for over 20 years. I have a firm grasp of economics and what we need to do to get the country moving forward economically. I'm very attuned to what the Constitution says and what the federal government should and should not be doing. And I think that we need somebody that isn't a professional candidate, professional politician, to go in and give a fresh perspective and try to put us back on track. You're not going to be able to pull the trigger and do it in one term, but I definitely have no interest in making a long-term career. I don't want to be in office 20, 30 years. I like to go in and represent the people and then step aside when the time comes and let somebody else continue the work. So I want the people of Delaware to know that about me.
Let's start with economic issues. The unemployment rate in Delaware has been hovering just above 6% for some time now, despite various efforts by the state to both create and retain jobs. If elected, what can you do to help create and retain jobs for Delawareans?
The federal government, it shouldn't be in the business of creating jobs, and neither should the state. But what the federal government can do is put policies into place that make it friendly for private businesses to grow. And that's not just throwing money at problems. That's keeping taxes low, keeping regulations at a point where they're not intrusive, to the point where they're shutting businesses down and driving up costs. So when people always ask, well, how can the federal government create jobs? The federal government doesn't create jobs besides federal jobs, and that's an issue all within itself. So I think what they need to do is and what we need to do is keep our eye on the ball and make it a friendly environment for people to be able to do business and let the private sector create good quality jobs. You made the point that unemployment's hovering around 6.5%. It's better than it was during the recession, of course, but we don't realize, or most people don't realize, or maybe they do, that the jobs that have been created that brought the unemployment rate down, they're lower paying jobs, they're more part-time jobs. A lot of people have dropped out of the workforce. So when people look at the statistics and they say, well, things are so much better from a statistical point of view, but maybe not so much from a realistic point of view.
Since the latest recession, the federal budget, national debt have been a big issue in Congress. You alluded to it a little bit earlier. If elected, what efforts would you make to address the budget and spending and the debt?
We need to cut the debt. I mean, absolutely need to cut the debt. We're over 17 trillion now. It's increased over the last 3-4 years, 40-some%. The debt is going to wipe out the middle class. I mean, and the younger people are going to have to pay for this debt sometime down the road. So we need to get our affairs in order. We need to get our budget balanced. We need to increase revenue by not increasing taxes, but increase jobs that get people paying the taxes. And we need to look at cutting wasteful spending. We need to take a look at our affairs overseas that are costing us lives and treasure, and just bring some sanity back into the process. If a business or a state or you and I did what the federal government doing, we've been bankrupt a long time ago. So we need to get our priorities straight when it comes to revenue and expenses.
The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, has also received a great deal of attention, especially in the House, where there have been numerous votes to either change it or repeal it. Where do you stand on Obamacare, and more broadly, what should be done here and now to tackle the challenges with the healthcare system in this country?
In 2012, I was the only candidate in Delaware who said he would vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and even though it's been implemented now, I think there still is the opportunity to repeal that and replace it with something proper. I mean, just last week, the Huffington Post put out a poll that 53% of the American people look at the Affordable Care Act unfavorably. And that's pretty raw data. And it's always been pretty even, throughout the entire process. But now you're beginning to see the negative go this way and the positive go this way. So they're starting to pull apart. But the interesting point about the data also said that the majority of American people don't want a complete repeal. They want, they want the law amended. They want something done about it. They don't want to just scrap it and go back to the way we had it before, but they want us to take a look at the legislation and fix it. I think we can. I think we can repeal it. I think we can initiate new legislation to keep the good parts that stops insurance companies from discriminating against people just because they're sick. That put lifetime limits on the insurance coverage they have, which can drive people into bankruptcy, and look at the option to keep kids on their parents' insurance policies longer, because there's a tough time getting jobs, so they need that safety net a little bit longer. So I think we can do that, and the way to bring costs down and not subsidize health care for the people of Delaware is to make it a lot simpler. And the way you keep costs down in business is you get a straight point of contact between the service provider and the customer. And right now, we don't have that. We have insurance companies, why are businesses in the insurance business? In other words, the companies we work for providing our health care, why aren't we buying it ourselves? The exchanges that the Affordable Care Act put in place that are being used, we don't need exchanges. We just need to be able to go online or go down the street, to our local insurance provider and buy the insurance. And if you do that and you cut out all the costs of everything going on in between, you can bring down costs so everybody can have a good shot to afford health care. So there's things that can be done, that can be looked at without government intrusion, to open up the marketplace for more choices. I mean, if there was an insurance company who was selling health insurance in Switzerland, I should be able to just go online, buy that insurance, and be covered. Right now, you can't do that. You go online, you have one, maybe two choices in your exchange, in your state, and that just is a recipe to drive up costs and make things unaffordable. When the Affordable Care Act was put into place here in Delaware, 5,400 families lost their health care coverage. So I'm sure they don't look at it too positively, and that's why I think it's starting to skew this way, because more and more people are being touched by it, either by having to buy higher price insurance or losing the insurance that they had, or being touched by all the taxes that have been implemented to subsidize the Affordable Care Act. And that's only going to get worse down the road in 2018 when the Cadillac provision hits, which is a 40% tax on insurance policies that are too expensive according to the government's eyes. So it's going to get worse before it gets better, and we need to nip it in the bud before people get used to it too long, because I think we can agree that once a government policy or program digs its heels in, it's almost impossible to get it out. So we need to do it now.
You talked a little bit earlier about business climate, and there has been an increase in the number of businesses reincorporating overseas to avoid U.S. taxes. This obviously is a big issue in Delaware, because that revenue is the second largest source of revenue in the state. How do you slow down this trend? How do you see this trend, and what can be done about it?
It certainly is a trend, and it certainly is happening. And the way I think that you combat that is you lower the corporate tax rate and make it more friendly for corporations to do business here. So if you lower the tax expense cost, then you can lower the costs across the board, which will have companies not so eager to ship jobs overseas and pay people in India or China or someplace else a quarter of what they pay a good quality job here in America. I think we need to lower the corporate tax rate. I think we need to take a look at putting incentives for companies not to send jobs overseas. Instead of punishing them, you say, hey, if you don't send these jobs overseas, there's even more things that the federal government can do to lower the cost burden upon the industry. So that would be the approach that I would look at.
Education, also a major topic. Delaware moving forward with implementing Common Core standards. How do you feel about Common Core? And I guess more broadly, what role do you feel the federal government has, if any, in being part of education reform?
I don't believe the federal government should be involved in federal education at all. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the federal government should be involved in education. That's dealt to the states. The states' constitutions generally, especially the one in Delaware, provide education for their kids, and they should continue to do that. We only receive about 6% funding from the federal government, but they ram legislation down our throats and standards down our throats like Common Core, and tell us that if we want to get any subsidies at all, you're going to implement these programs. And I think that is the wrong way to go. How do I feel about Common Core? I need to get more information about it. I know that there's a lot of people that are upset. I know the Delaware Teachers Union didn't support Common Core. I know that the testing standards, to change Delaware's testing standards to Common Core, failed in the state Senate, but then there was a revote and they flip-flopped and switched it to implement it. And so that gets your ears up right there. It's like, okay, what is going on around here? You know, more federal influence into our school system, and I don't think that's proper. I think education should be left to local school districts. It should be left to the principals, the teachers, and the parents to decide how you're going to educate your kids and how curricula should be delivered and what the standards should be. The federal government should be completely out of public education.
And I want to wrap up on something that people have talked about a lot recently, and that is the inability of Congress to get things done, the gridlock in Washington, D.C. How can you, if elected, get the ball rolling again and get things done in Congress?
Send more libertarians and Green Party and independents to Congress. That's how you get that done. Seriously, sending folks like me or non-career politicians that aren't motivated by lobbyists or their base is the way to get things done. I mean, I personally could caucus on either side of the aisle because I'm a strong believer in civil liberties. I'm a strong believer in keeping the government out of your private life. That's been a traditional issue from the Democratic Party. On the other side of the aisle, I'm not for raising any type of taxes. I'm for smaller fiscal government. I'm a strong believer in Second Amendment rights, which puts me on the right-hand side. So I can find common ground with both sides of the aisle, and I can work with them. I think the way you have it right now, you're right. It's polarized. There isn't a lot going on. I don't think it's going to change. The only time it seems like things get done is that the majority of all chambers are all the same party, and all that does is isolates the other party. From one of the other major parties takes power, nothing ever gets done. So we need to have people with fresh perspectives, different ideologies, and people who are willing to meet on both sides of the aisle on the issues, or you're right, we're never going to get anywhere.
All right, Scott Gesty, Libertarian Party candidate for U.S. House. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You can find all of our candidate conversations online at DelawarePublicMedia.org and DelawareDebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped here at Delaware State University and are part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. Thanks so much for watching.